Hello, we are Group 5. Our team read a piece by Ashante and Reese titled Block Food Geographies, a book review. The following presentation will be described by myself, Tatsuki, along with Elise, Olivia, and Hannah. Ashante and Reese receiving her PhD in anthropology, specifically in Black geographies, which encompasses the way Black people imagine, produce, and navigate the spaces they occupy. Within this specific piece, Reese focuses on Black food culture and justice. It is her first book, which won the 2020 Best Monograph Prize from the Association for the Study of Food and Society, along with a joint award for the 2020 Merglet Award presented by Association of American Anthropologists and the Society for Applied Anthropology. She followed up this success with a book titled Black Food Matters, Racial Justice in the Wake of Food Justice, and her work is supported by many foundations and institutions, such as the National Science Foundation and the American Council for Learning Society. Our third thesis seem to aim to connect with how and where Black people create food geographies, both within and in spite of anti-Black racism, while also deeply engaging with the food disparities that result from it.
So in order for us to support the thesis that we provided, we explored each chapter in depth to gather evidence. So in chapter 1, Reese frames the culinary scene in Deanwood and the importance of self-reliance in the context of the Great Migration through the 1980s using historical and archival research. According to her, Black families could resist racism through self-reliance in Deanwood in the early 20th century by developing the enterprises, social networks, and land that supported both the community and the individual. She also documented how the expansion of big grocery chains affected Deanwood's food scene, reflecting and perpetuating racial disparities by dislodging small Black and Jewish-owned grocers. In chapter 2, Reese focuses on the experiences and criticisms of the current culinary scene from the inhabitants of Deanwood. This chapter is full of examples of the contradictions born out of anti-Blackness that are encountered on a daily basis. These include residents' dissatisfaction with the subpar and limited selection of products at their neighborhood Safeway, the fact that many residents shop there occasionally due to its convenience, the sophisticated techniques residents use to shop elsewhere, and the enduring discourses of personal responsibility surrounding these disparities, even though residents are aware of how racism has shaped the food landscape. Chapter 3 examines how Deanwood residents use collective memory, imagination, symbolism, and desire to create narratives about their preferred food landscapes that are rooted in values of community cohesion, self-reliance, and the best of the past. It does this by drawing on Munoz's concept of productive nostalgia, as well as Reese's own nostalgic imaginaries. She explores community market status as an icon, a symbol of the economic viability of Black-owned businesses in Deanwood in Chapter 4, as well as Mr. Jones, who is the community market's owner, and his function as a moral authority in the neighborhood. Reese describes how Community Market and Mr. Jones, despite having a limited influence on residents' actual food procurement practices, provide a safe and nurturing environment for both elders and young people in Deanwood, drawing on her own participant observation in the store. These establishments hold a significant position in the community's social and moral economies. In Chapter 5, in the context of gentrification and forced relocation, it centers on a community garden project as both a literal and symbolic spatial reflection of residents' commitment to building a healthy community. Reese clarifies that the Deanwood gardeners aim to feed the soul a serving of hope with a side of self-reliance, which is on page 130. As their own grassroots respond to ongoing structural violence coming from policymakers, even though the project started as part of a grassroots effort to address food insecurity. In order to provide context for her critique of macro-level inequalities in the food system and beyond, Reese reiterates throughout the volume her emphasis on micro-level neighborhood and individual experiences, priorities, and quiet refusals. There are unspoken narratives about deservedness when it comes to agency, choice, and preference about where to shop and what to eat, as well as the right to healthy and high quality food that can be accessed with dignity and is in a pleasant environment, that are present in a lot of the academic literature on food. This literature often ignores or minimizes the opinions and desires of people of color and the poor. In contrast, she examines how racism, poverty, and structural inequality limit the agency limit agency while simultaneously honoring the experiences, preferences, opinions, and agency of the residents of Deanwood and the diversity of their attitudes.
So, while reading, we picked out some strengths highlighted in the chapters that aided the explanation of the situation. So, starting with the hands on approach that Reese has when gathering information for this book, she went and did in person interviews with people who have been experiencing the struggle and food insecurity. The residents offer a more in depth explanation and they show the real problems going on in their communities that are often overlooked when researched from an outside perspective. Another aspect in this book is the historical research that has been added. So, research like this plays a crucial role in understanding the changes and beginning of the problem of food insecurity. In this book specifically, the history used helped aid in understanding where this problem started and the social aspects that have kept food insecurity for Black people alive today. There's a lot of information that shows patterns in history, and it really shows the patterns of how statistically Black people struggle more when it comes to food security. This information also really brings in the severity and length that these people have been struggling for, so it can make us culturally and socially aware. Reese writes about her experience and fieldwork throughout the book, which happened in Deanwood. This is a firsthand example of how Black people are struggling in society, so her being there and telling these people's stories gives a unique view. Not only is she researching, but she's telling the importance of changing the system and the effect it will have on these people's lives. The stories and information she shared from these interviews only deepen the understanding of the low food access and racial inequality being displayed in Deanwood. And the only apparent weakness that we found in this book is that it was all from one perspective and it didn't describe any comprehensive improvements. So, with all the information that was gathered by Reese, she didn't include how this problem could be solved or the steps being taken to resolve these issues. The people whose stories were told were portrayed as victims more than they were portrayed as the survivors that they are. So, with that, there was a lack of character development. The main problem with this is that people commonly resist change when they don't see the broader purpose. So if there's no solution presented, then people won't put in that extra effort to try to help.
All right, so now each of us are going to present our own personal opinion on the book that we read. So personally, I've never read an anthropology related book before. So this was the first of its kind that I've read. And although I wasn't really sure what to anticipate, my expectations were surpassed. I think the author did an excellent job at formatting her thoughts and experiences in a way that keeps the reader engaged and eager to continue learning about what she was learning. I also personally really love the interview and perspective format throughout the book because I was able to insert myself into Reese's eyes and ears as she was observing and listening to the people of Deanwood's stories. And I think I've always been aware of the depth of racism that exists in our country, but maybe more on a surface level. Um, so to come to the realization that racism goes deeper to even just the accessibility of food is pretty devastating to learn about. But I'm glad that I had the opportunity to be educated and now more aware of the severity of this issue.
So even for someone like me who had no familiarity with anthropology, I believe learning how the food we have today is produced, distributed, and secured in is a great opportunity to understand the environment and learn about new foods and culture. Whether you have lived in this area for a long time or are an international students like me, I believe that this attitude would not only allow us to recognize the production and distribution system of particular food, but also promote a comprehensive understanding of the global food classes and food-related sanitation.
So for me, I have a lot of background information on food deserts and food insecurity, and this book just added to that knowledge. I really like the in-person approach that Reese took in this book to get unique stories from people actually experiencing this. And I think Deanwood is one of many places that have a problem like this, and you often hear from researchers on these topics. So to actually get the stories of the residents makes you really realize the severity of the situation. And personally, this book was really eye-opening and makes me want to support smaller businesses in areas like Deanwood that were described, instead of supporting large chains that refuse to open stores where there's high crime and low profit. I knew that food access is a struggle in some places, but this really informed me of the racial inequality and how a predominantly Black society is treated based on stereotypes.
The stories and experiences that this book highlighted, I feel like really opened my eyes to some of the aspects of food insecurity and security that I've never really considered before. I've seen food insecurity and the struggles that people in my community have faced through the challenges that food insecurity presents, through volunteering and some volunteer work that I've done with my local church back home. But hearing the stories the book told showed me a whole different world of food insecurity that I wasn't educated on and that I didn't know about, and specifically the ways that racism plays a part in food insecurity in many areas and situations. I think that the most shocking aspect of this book to me, and these stories that were in this book, was how the Deanwood residents and their account of how food security had changed over time. This made me think about how food and grocery shopping has changed in my own lifetime, and I've noticed, and I think a lot of us have noticed, a significant change in grocery shopping and the price of accessible and nutritious foods over the last few years. But this difference feels so insignificant compared to the food and change in security that the residents of Deanwood experienced. I've thought a lot about how people talk about the price of groceries now, or how many times that's become a barrier in my own life. And I feel like hearing these stories and reading this book has really helped me feel grateful for what I have and the access to food that I have, and makes me want to pay closer attention to the realities of food insecurity and what that might mean for some people. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We appreciate you taking the time, and we hope that our take on this book and our knowledge on this book has helped you learn something and gain some knowledge on food insecurity and what you can do about it.